Yeah, thank you, sir, for introducing me. So, before I start my presentation, first of all, I would like to thank my supervisor, Dr. Ritesh Kumar Kesri, for promoting me for this webinar, and Dr. Jagdish, sir, HOD Nagpur Institute of Technology, for inviting me, and most importantly, the participants who spare their valuable time for this webinar. So let us start the presentation. I'm just sharing my screen. It is disabled, sir. The host disabled sharing screen. Okay, is my screen is visible? Okay, for better visualization, I should turn off my video. Okay. Yeah. Now I think you have a clear picture. Okay. So welcome to this webinar on design opportunities and challenges in synchronous reluctance motor for traction application. So today I am covering about some basics of electrical vehicle, some basic topology, what are the things needed for this vehicle, and especially I'd like to have some discussion on the electric motors. So these are the components available for electric vehicle we should have. Of course, this image is not mine, it is taken from Google Images. So first of all, we should have a fuel is here battery, then charging infrastructure for this battery, and we should drive our load by means of a inverter and DC loads, that is anterior loads of a vehicle. These are called auxiliary loads, and most importantly I can say you that electric motor is the heart of this vehicle, which is eventually going to drive your wheels. So today we are discussing about the electric motors. So in the category of electric motors, we have permanent magnet and non-permanent magnet motors. In permanent magnet motors, we have surface permanent magnet motor, anterior permanent magnet motor, and of course BLDC, well known brushless DC motors. And in the category of non-permanent magnet motor, we have well known to us, that is induction motor, then switched reluctance motor, and I am concentrating about this topology, synchronous reluctance motor. So what a motor should have to be applied in traction application. So these are the basic characteristics of an electric motor should have, that is high torque density and high power density. So of course we know that electric vehicles have some space concern issues. So because of that we need a small motor to deliver more torque and more power. So this first point is regarding this high torque density and high power density. Then high torque for starting to just overcome the inertia of the wheels and other parts of the body, and at low speeds of course, and of course at hill climbing, and high power for high speed. Then we should have a wide efficiency over the wide speed torque speed range, that is in the constant torque zone as well as the flux quickening zone. Then intermediate overload capacity, typically twice the rated torque. This is highly essential in case of hill climbing. Then high reliability, of course we know this motors are these motors which are used in electric vehicles are exposed to the environmental conditions, so we need a high reliability and high robustness for these type of motors. Then low acoustic noise and low torque ripple. Okay, this is only for the driver comfortness. If there is a torque ripple, then there is some acoustic noise in the vehicle. It should not be there. Then finally, it should have acceptable cost. Now, we have permanent magnet motor which have a inherent capability of dominant in the torque. So, of course, we know permanent magnet has its own flux linkage which can provide you more torque in a less volume of motor. The volume of the motor will be less and as compared to the non-permanent magnet motors. So we have good motors, then why we are thinking of the other solutions? That is important. Now, as I can say, you can have this graph. This is taken from this paper. Okay. So during 2011 to 2013, of course, yeah, 13. So the cost of these permanent magnet motors are generally using rare earth materials, that is neodymium iron boron magnets. These price of neodymium iron boron magnets are hiked about 300 times of its original cost. You can see here the original cost per, this is in kg. So the original cost was this, around $50. Then it hiked about $450 during this period. Then it came down, but it never reaches to its original price what it has before. So then people, this happened because of some countries' market monopoly. So I don't want to discuss about those countries. So some country market monopoly over this permanent magnet. So then researcher, industrialists are thinking of what are the solution we have where we can use non-permanent magnet motor for this application. So you can see a 25 times hike. So next, in the category of induction non-permanent motor, we have induction motor and synchronous reluctance motor. So we have, what are the opportunities in this motor I am talking about? Of course, it is a special machine, generally not used in conventional purpose. So I have a short comparison over induction motor and synchronous reluctance motor. So this comparison I have taken from this paper, I have referred below. The ratio of torque of synchronous reluctance motor to induction motor is 0.82, means of course you can say synchronous reluctance motor is providing less torque as compared to induction motor. But if you coming to the power loss, since we don't have any rotor winding or any magnets, so the power loss is only about 50%. You can see the induction motor power loss is 50% higher than synchronous reluctance motor. So for the purpose of comparison, when we are comparing two motors, we should have equal losses. So when the losses are made equal, then you can see here clearly synchronous reluctance motor is providing 1.42 times, means 1.5 times actually, 1.5 times more torque than induction motor when the losses are made equal. So these are made equal generally by doing √2 times from the nominal value. Of course, if you need a detailed calculation, you can go through this paper. Then, coming to switched reluctance motor, which is developed earlier, and synchronous reluctance motor. So what is the difference between switched reluctance and synchronous reluctance? So here I just made a short comparison. Of course, it is not limited to this. The stator saliency, you can call saliency is nothing but how I can say, saliency means just there is a variation in the air gap. There is a variation in the air gap. You can have salient pole synchronous motors in your BTech syllabus. So from there it came from. The saliency is double, that is stator plus rotor in case of switched reluctance motor, and in case of synchronous reluctance motor the saliency is only on the rotor side. Then Stator are salient poles, concentrated coils, and rotor is conventional AC machine. Conventional means here only induction motor we are talking about, which is generally highly used in every application. Then rotor, salient poles. Rotor should have salient poles here. You can see here the salient poles. And it is the internal arrangement of flux guides. I will explain you later what are these arrangements. Then excitation, how the machine should be excited. It is a pulse DC sequence voltage, okay, and this is balanced three-phase sinusoidal currents. Then inductance waveform, this is trapezoidal or triangular, and this is sinusoidal. However, this depends upon the winding arrangement. Generally it is sinusoidal, but may not be for all the cases. If you have concentrated machine, then this shape of this inductance may change. Then converter, asymmetric half bridge converter, and this is conventional three-phase inverter. Okay. So this is a short comparison between switched reluctance and synchronous reluctance. Now, coming to our point of interest. Coming to our point of interest, then design of synchronous reluctance motor. So the basic principle of operation is like a in a electrical circuit, the current will always tend to follow the low resistive path. Similarly, in a magnetic circuit, the magnetic field will always try to have the minimum reluctance path. So I will explain you better. This is a general structure, four-pole structure of synchronous reluctance motor. Let me zoom out for you. Yeah. Now you can see here we have two axes. One is D axis, another is Q axis, which is electrically 90 degree apart from each other. These yellow regions you can see here. These yellow regions are air gap, and these regions, I can say these regions, these are iron. Iron means your conventional laminations. So this is called a radial rib. This is radial rib, and these are called this area I have shown here. This is tangential ribs. These are tangential ribs. These are my windings like conventional induction motor windings. This represents the shaft. This is rotor. This portion is air gap. Okay. This is okay. I think I explained the structure. Yeah. Now, this is the basic principle I tried to show you. You can see whenever the flux linkage changes, it tries to have the minimum reluctance path. So we are exciting a sinusoidal quantity which is rotating at a synchronous speed. So you can see here it is rotating at a speed of synchronous speed. So in the aim to align itself in the minimum reluctance position, the rotor will also catch up the same speed what the stator is revolving at. So that's why it is called synchronous reluctance motor. In case of switched reluctance motor, it is of course not. So hope this animation will clear the operation of synchronous reluctance motor, how it operates actually. Next. So the stator is same as induction motor, more or less it is same. So I am not discussing about the stator. It is conventional induction motor. You can follow a book, A.K. Savni or Ayan Boldia, standard books for the stator design. I will discuss on the rotor topology of this machine. So in literature we have two types of rotor. The rotor, the primary should be, the rotor should be made anisotropy in structure. What is anisotropy? If the structure is similar from all the view, it is called isotropy structure. If the structure is having some dissimilarities in the view, it is called anisotropy structure. So here we can see This is one structure, this is one structure. Both represents the synchronous reluctance rotor. The first one is called axially laminated structure. You can see the iron and the non-magnetic material. So the yellow color shows the non-magnetic material are sandwiched together in an axially direction, and here it is bolded. So this type of structure is popular in 1920s, 1930s, and this will give you high saliency ratio. I will tell you what is saliency ratio. This will give you high saliency ratio, but the problem is in the manufacturing. This is a very complicated manufacturing process because each lamination has to sandwich between a non-magnetic material. Generally it can be a paper or something else, epoxy or something else. So because of this it is not much popular and people will lose their interest on this machine. Then coming to the next structure, which is called transversely laminated structure. Excuse me. Yeah. So this is transversely laminated structure where the laminations are mounted together. Then we cut some part of the lamination to form the air gap. You can see both the structure, the goal is same. We should have lamination as well as air gap, but how to achieve it is different. Here the manufacturing complexity is there because each lamination has to be cut, then it has to be sandwiched between a non-magnetic material. But here all the lamination can be stacked together, then we can cut it to have some air gap. These air gaps are necessary. I will tell you why. Next, what are the design objectives for this synchronous reluctance rotor? As I told you, it should have high anisotropy. Hello, my voice is clear? Hello, is my voice is clear? Okay, so the rotor objectives. What are the rotor design objectives? Before somebody start designing, what are the things should be kept in mind before designing the rotor? So first of all, it should have high anisotropy. High anisotropy, what is anisotropy? I already told you. So we should have a dissimilarity in the structure of the rotor. Next, acceptable insulation ratio. What is this about insulation ratio? I will tell you. High saliency ratio. Yeah, we have to define saliency ratio. It's probably coming in the next slide. So improved power factor. I think this is a general thing you should know. And low torque ripple. As I explained earlier, we should have less torque ripple for the driver comfortness. Then of course it should have mechanically robust. Why you are thinking about the mechanically robustness of the rotor, I will discuss. Then of course it should have adequate thermal response to the environment condition, and the heating of winding should be in a temperature limit. Next, let us have some basic equation of this motor. So the torque developed is nothing but the same as like IPM motor, that is anterior permanent magnet motor. Here the permanent magnet component is absent, only reluctance component is present. So this is given by 3/2 P1 LD 1 minus 1 by zeta IDIQ. So these are the terminology. P1 stands for the number of pole pairs, LD inductance along D axis, then ID current component along Q axis, D axis, and IQ current component along Q axis. Then zeta is the saliency ratio. This is a crucial factor, we should think of it. What is this? This is nothing but LD by LQ, the ratio of inductance oriented along D axis to Q axis. This is a very crucial factor, as I told you. So a designer should have to have high this saliency ratio. You can see here, when the saliency ratio is more, the torque produced will be high. So to have a good torque density motor for traction application, we should have saliency ratio as high as possible. Then the power factor is also depends, the maximum power factor on the saliency ratio. This is represented as this zeta minus 1 by zeta plus 1. So next, as I told you earlier, what is barrier? So this is my barrier. This part is my carrier, is constituted of laminations, iron lamination, and this yellow part is called barrier. Actually, why it is called barrier? Because it restricts the flow of flux lines, and this is accepts the flow of flux lines. That's why it is called carrier. So by thinking where the flux will flow, we have decided the terminology. One will be carrier and another will be barrier. So in air gap, the flux lines of course will not flow. The flux density will be very less in the air gap. So how you should decide how many barrier you should have per pole? This is a per pole structure. So here I have shown for 4 barriers. So how to decide how many barriers you should have? Now coming to this, this I have plotted the intensity waveform along with the rotor position. You should have a quasi-square wave. You can see here, yeah, you can see here, it should have a quasi-square wave, but this dip is coming because of the slotting effect. You know, perhaps I think slotting effect, because the slot openings are creating these dips. So this is the case when there is no barrier in the rotor structure. So there is one effect, one dip effect. So when there is one barrier, you can see here there is no pulsation in H, but here again one pulsation is coming in the H. Similarly for 2 barrier, there are 2 pulsation. Again for 3, the number of pulsation increases. Number of 4 barrier, number of pulsation again increases. 5, and then this is 6. The number of pulsation increases, which is eventually corresponds to your torque ripple. So before deciding how many barriers, we should think about our saliency ratio. What should be the characteristic of B and H we should have in the air gap. These are shown for air gap characteristics. Now I told you what is saliency ratio. Now coming to insulation ratio. The next design parameter should have the insulation ratio. So this is defined as the total air oriented along Q axis. Means this is our Q axis, this is our D axis. Yeah. Why I am not able to do? Yeah. This represents our D axis, and this is going to represent our Q axis. So I am using a mouse, so perhaps it may not be coming good. Yeah. So let me just erase it. Yeah. So the total air oriented along Q axis divided by the total iron oriented along Q axis. So this insulation ratio also has an considerable impact on this rotor design. So this is the area of air. Okay. So BU, here B represents for barrier and C represents for carrier. So this is B1, B2, B3, B4. So the summation of all this area divided by the iron part of this, where this DRO is nothing but the outer diameter of the rotor, DRI is the inner diameter, and B represents for barrier, LG is nothing but the length of air gap provided between the stator and the rotor, and X stands for total number of barriers present here. Now, these are some result which we obtained here. So the first figure consists of the inductance along D and inductance along Q, that is LD, LQ, then insulation ratio. With respect to insulation ratio, as I told you before, we should have a high LD by LQ ratio, that is the zeta should be high, saliency ratio should be high to have a high torque density motor. So in this connection, my LD should be high and LQ should be as low as possible. This is from design aspects. So you can see here, when insulation ratio is increased, that is we are considering from 0.2 to 1, so from 0.2 to 0.6 there is a healthy improvement in average torque and as well as saliency ratio. You can see here, this black line is representing torque, saliency ratio, and this one representing blue line is simply representing torque. So from 0.2 to 0.6 we have a healthy improvement in the torque. This is why, because you can see here from 0.2 to 0.6 the LD, this black line represents LD, which is nearly about constant. You can see the variations is around 2 millihenry. This is in millihenry, so 56, 58, around 2 millihenry. But coming to this axis, LQ decreases a huge value. Starting from 16 millihenry, it reaches about 10 millihenry. So because the LQ decreases, we will have a torque increase. This is from 0.2 to 0.6. Why it happens? Because we introduced more air in the structure. Because of the introduction of air in the structure, so means KQ is the effective air gap provided in the rotor divided by the effective iron in the rotor. So the KQ is increased means the air gap is increased, right? And of course iron is decreased. So air gap is increased, because of that the anisotropy property of the rotor will increase, and which will eventually decrease your LQ. However, the LD remains almost constant during this 0.2 to 0.6. So between 0.6 to 0.8 you can see here the torque profile, torque and saliency profile. So 0.6 to 0.8 there is not much increment in its torque. Why? Because between 0.6 to 0.8 the variation in LQ is not much higher. It already approaches to its minimum level. So between 0.8 to 0.9 we have optimal results. You can see here between 0.8 to 0.9 we have good torque performance around 5 Newton meter, and the saliency ratio is around also 5, because the LQ has already approached to its minimum level. If you further increase air gap, what will going to happen? Again the flux linkage in the rotor will decrease, because increase in air gap means we are decreasing the iron part of the machine. So you can see here, if you further increase in air gap, the torque is going to reduce, because there is a drop in LD. You can see it drops from 58 to around 52 for saliency ratio 1. Okay, so this is the design parameters. You should think of it. So here we have chosen 0.85 saliency ratio by taking torque ripple. Of course you can say it is higher for 0.9, but we have chosen 0.85 because of torque, taking torque ripple into consideration. So these are the evaluated values for my rotor. This carrier number 1, this region, what is the length, all are provided in mm. So this is the outer diameter of the rotor, inner diameter, this is the shaft diameter. Then carrier number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can see here in this region. So these are the values, design values for this rotor. Next, effect of number of flux barriers on the motor parameters. So already I told you what is the effect of flux barriers. If you have more number of flux barriers, generally there is an increment in torque ripple. Apart from that, we have other aspects also for flux barriers. So this table shows the detailed analysis of increase in flux barriers, what are the effect on the machine parameters. So for barrier number 1, so this is what this is the specification of M19. This is a grade of silicon steel what we have used for our machine laminations. So we should have a specification, we should consider this. I will tell you why. First of all, the wild stress limit, this is mechanical perspective. Wild stress limit is through 320 megapascal. So what is wild stress? The stress at which the core material starts deforming. Then tensile stress. What is tensile stress? At which the core material breaks permanently. This is 450 megapascal. Then Poisson ratio. So this is the transfer to longitudinal extension. This is related to the elasticity of the material. Okay, these data are taken from this data sheet. Now coming to the discussion, you can have, somebody can see if the number of barrier are 6, you have a good torque response, that is around 6 Newton meter. Okay, but what is going to happen? The maximum principal stress, means the stress exposed to the rotor structure. What is stress? When the rotor rotates, definitely there will be a rotational force acting on the rotor which is outward from the shaft of the machine. So these forces are called rotational forces and which cannot be avoided. Why we are considering in this machine? Why not in induction motor and switched reluctance motor? Because we have a structure here like this. Yeah, we have a structure here like this. In induction motor, the rotor is a solid material. Of course, in switched reluctance motor, the rotor is also a solid material. There is no air gap in between. But the machine we are talking about, we have a combination of steel as well as air gap. So the strength, you can see this part, this entire region is holded by this thin support. Similarly, this iron weight is supported by these thin supports. These are called tangential ribs. Similarly, this one is supported by these thin supports. So when the machine rotates, we have stress on these supports. Definitely we are going to have stress on these supports because of this. The rotational forces will be radially outward and it will be higher at these regions. Okay. Now, coming back to the discussion, when the number of barriers are 6, if the number of barriers are 6, that means what we are doing, we are imposing more air and you are reducing the iron content. We are imposing more air in the structure. So that's why the stress is increased and it is 14% higher than the core material. The permitted stress we should have is 320 of the core material, which is provided by the manufacturer data sheet. We should not cross this limit while designing the machine. But When we are providing 6 number of barriers, it is around 365. So we have 14% higher. This is the deformation in micrometer. Then coming to the lowest one, if you have one barrier also, this is again increased about 16%. Why? If you have less barrier, it should not increase, right? But it increases. I'll tell you why. Now, if you have one barrier, suppose we have only one barrier here, you forget about all this B1 and B3, B4 you forget, you have only B2 in the structure. Now, the entire iron part is divided into two regions. One will be here in this region and another will be here in this region. So, the weight of iron, the volume of iron, the total iron is supported by these ribs, and the volume of this iron is supported by these ribs. Okay, so the entire weight of iron is divided into two parts, which is supported by some thin joints, you can say. So that's why if you have one barrier also, the stress is going to increase. Yeah, if you have one barrier, the saliency will be less, of course. That's why you have decreased performance of torque. If you compare with 6 barrier, it is 46% decrease. And for one barrier, I explained you why there is an increment in the stress of the rotor. Now, similarly for two barriers, you have 31% decrease in torque, again 1% increase in the wild stress limit of the core material. For three barrier, 14% decrease. This all decrement in torque is compared with the 6 number of barriers, and you have 305 megapascal, which is 4% around lower than the value permitted by the core material, which is acceptable. But there is a 14% lower in torque, which is not acceptable. Then coming to 5 barrier, only 5% lower in torque, but again there is an increment in the stress, which is higher than 7%, which is permitted by the core material. So finally we concluded that we should have 4 barrier in the structure. Of course, it has a limitation of 10% decrease in torque compared to 6 barriers, but we have a adequate mechanical property of the machine. You can see it is 292.67, which is 8% lower than the wild stress limit of the core material. But it should be noted that there is no safety factor taken in this analysis. There is no safety factor. We should have a safety factor in our analysis. These values are without safety factor, this stress limit. So this is the conclusion what I already told. We have gone for, that's why we have gone for 4 barriers. Next, selection of rib width. I told you what is rib. We have 2 ribs in the structure. Yeah, this is called tangential rib. Another rib will come, that is radial rib. I will tell you later what is radial rib. So this is tangential rib. So how to select the width of these ribs? What are the impact on the electromagnetic performance as well as on the mechanical properties of the machine while selecting the width of these ribs? Somebody cannot say I will have 5 mm rib or 1 mm rib or 0.5 mm rib. We should consider the design aspects. Anonymously we cannot design the width of ribs. Yeah. So it is generally desirable to have a safety factor, I told you in the previous slide. Now, while considering the safety factor of 1.5, yeah, perhaps it is not a standard safety factor. You can have safety factor 2. It can go up to 2.5. This depends upon the material property as well as the rotational speed of the machine. Our speed is limited to 6000 RPM, so we have taken a safety factor of 1.5. Again, after taking the safety factor of 1.5, the stress what I defined you earlier it can be rewritten, that is 2013 megapascal and 300 megapascal. So at this the material will damage, and at this it will start deforming. So we should avoid this number. We should not go beyond that this will happen. So we should avoid this number. That is, to have a robust rotor, the width of tangential ribs has to be higher. Yes, of course, the width of tangential ribs has to be higher. However, the increment in the width of these ribs beyond a certain limit is not advisable. Why? Because we have adverse effect you can say, on electromagnetic performance. Yeah, I will tell you what is happening. Now, the torque loss component, as I told you, we have a adverse effect, means we are going to lose our torque capability. So the torque loss component is given by this. This is a standard derivation which you can further in our paper. So this, by constituting, by taking all the factors to be constant, that is your number of pole wears, permeability, and this flux density, scatter coefficient, length of air gap, of course it is constant, and this saturation factor. If you take all these constant, then you can see the torque loss is directly proportional to the width of these tangential ribs. Okay. So what we should do, if you decrease the width of tangential ribs, the torque is going to increase, but the rotor will suffer from fatigue, right? If you going to increase it, the rotor will be robust, but the torque loss is going to be high. So what we should do? Now we have done an analysis, that is varying the rotor rib. I have shown the rib structure only here for better clarity. So here the rotor rib width, this is the outer periphery of the rotor, and this is the tip of the barrier, tip of the barrier, right? And here the length is measured in mm. So starting from 1 mm to 0.4 mm we have taken in our analysis. We didn't go below 0.4 mm because it is very difficult to manufacture the practically rotor to have less than 0.4 mm thickness of a material. It is very difficult. We may not have the accurate dimension of our motor when we are going to have manufacturability point of view. So we didn't discuss less than 0.4. This is the layout, and this is the discussion. Let me zoom it for you. So yes, this is tangential rib width in mm. So I already told you we started from 0.4 and we have gone up to 1 mm. So you can see the effects here. LD is nearly about constant. Why? This is a point somebody can ask me. Why your LD is not varying? Of course your LQ is varying. You can see this is the parameters axis for LQ. You can see it started from 10 millihenry, then it gone for up to 13 millihenry. But your LD is near about almost constant. Some variation is because of saturation effect that may not be considered for this analysis. So why my LD remains constant? Now to discuss this, again I should have the motor geometry. Yeah. Now when we are increasing the width of these ribs, actually there will be two flux lines flowing in the machine. One is when you excite the d-axis component of your current, that is ID. Another is when you excite through the q-axis component of current, that is IQ. Now to have a better saliency ratio, as I told you earlier, we should have a good LD and less LQ as from the design perspective. So to have good LD, our flux line should be concentrated more towards d-axis, means the flux lines should flow more towards d-axis rather than towards flowing q-axis. Okay, if your flux linkage in the q axis will decrease, which is eventually going to decrease your inductance. So if your flux linkage in the d axis will increase, it will increase your LD. So if increase LD and decrease LQ, will have good saliency ratio and good torque performance. Now coming to the discussion, what is going to happen when you increase this width? When you increase this width, the q axis flux line will be more intense in the rev area. So the flux linkages in the q axis is increasing. That means what is going to have? You have a higher inductance in the q axis. Yeah. Now if the I explained you what is happening when you are increasing the rev of the width, rev width. So your d axis flux linkage is almost constant. It is independent of the tangential rev width. However, when we are increasing the rev width, the q axis flux linkage is going to increase, which should be avoided, but we cannot avoid from the structural point of view. We should have a rev width to hold this iron structure. So when we are going from 0.4 to 1, we can see here the LQ is increasing. So what is saliency ratio? LD by LQ. If your LQ is increasing, the saliency ratio is decreasing, and the torque is directly proportional to saliency ratio. So eventually you are going to have a low torque density motor. Now how to consider the width of these ribs? Again, yeah, in this figure I am just showing the average torque in Newton meter with the variation in the rib width. You can see when it is 4, it is around 5.5 and it is coming to 4. We have a 1.5 Newton meter decrease in torque for a 0.6 mm. We started from 0.4 and ended in 1. For a 0.6 mm, you can say 0.6 is very less from geometry point of view. For a 0.6 mm increase in width, the torque is decreased about 1.5 Newton meter, which is a very high value. Okay, so we can say here the tangential rev width is highly sensitive to the electromagnetic performance of the motor. Now we have discussed the electromagnetic. Let us come to the mechanical perspective. So from mechanical perspective, so these all datas are with respect to 0.4 mm. So this bar represents the reduction in stress and this bar represents the reduction in deformation. So when we have a when we are increasing the rev width, that means we are making actually the motor robust from mechanical point of view. But when we are making robust, we have a decreased performance in torque. So what should we do now? This analysis just share with you. We have 17% reduction in stress when we are increasing just 0.1 mm. 0.1 is very less. Even I am talking about millimeters. 0.1 mm increase in the width, there is 17% less, followed by 29% in 0.6, 39.7, 47.8, 50% less in 0.9, again 51% in 1 millimeter. Now what should we do? If you are going to make them robust, mechanically robust the rotor, then it is decreasing the torque. This is an open problem. Somebody can come up with better solution. What we have done, I am just going to tell you those things. Now this is the detailed analysis what we have shown in the graph. So for 0.4 mm, you can see the torque is having very good 5.5 Newton meter around. But what is the stress limit? I told you 213 megapascal, which should not exceed 213 megapascal by taking a safety factor of 1.5, but we have a 350 megapascal stress here. Because of the less width of the rib, the rotor is not mechanically robust, even it is not mechanically reliable, I can say. And all these parameters are taken at a speed of 6000 rpm, not at the base speed. My motor base speed is 1500 rpm. I am just talking about the flux thickening region where the speed will be more higher, constant power zone. I am not interested in constant torque zone. For electric vehicle, we should have a better criteria in the constant power zone. Now, when we are talking about 0.5, so we have 5.35, which is 2% less than the previous value, but we have a 37% higher stress limit than the core material which is exposed to. Similarly, for 0.6, we have 8% less in torque, which is not acceptable, and we have 16% less, this is also not acceptable. For 0.7, we have 13% less in torque, is not acceptable, but we have good mechanical performance, that is, we have near about good mechanical performance, we have near about the wild stress limit of the core material. These are all taking a safety factor of 1.5 I am discussing, not the actual values. So, we can have rib width of 0.7 mm to have good mechanically robust rotor, but coming to the electromagnetic performance, there is 13% lower than the original torque value of the motor. These all values are compared with 0.4 mm. Now coming to 0.8, the rotor you can say mechanically robust and very stable, but the torque is not acceptable. Coming to 0.9, same situation here, the torque is not acceptable and it is further decreased, but the mechanical robustness of the rotor is increasing. Again coming to 1, further there is a decrement in torque, but there is an increment in mechanically robustness. Of course, we are changing the width, we are increasing the width, the rotor will be mechanically robust, but you can see here the torque, finally at 1, the torque is less by around 30%. So what we are going to achieve? We are going to achieve nothing with this parameter of 1, because of course the motor is mechanically robust, but the torque is very less, so it is not acceptable. Now, what is the idea? The idea, we should have some extra support in the rotor. So apart from this, what we have done, we have chosen this one, 0.5 mm, which the torque is less only by 0.2%, but we are not satisfying this value 292. To satisfy this, we should have some more support. So why didn't gone for this value? Because of course this is very good value with respect to electromagnetic, but the mechanical properties are very bad, so we cannot choose this value. That's why we are just choosing the next one, 0.5 mm, where the torque performance is only decreased by 2%, but we are not satisfying here. You can have a note on this. We are not satisfying here at all. We should decrease the stress limit of the core material to have a satisfactory value. So the idea is, along with 0.5 mm tangential rib, we should have some radial ribs. These are called radial ribs. I numbered it as RR1, RR2, RR3 and RR4, depending upon the barrier number, barrier 1, barrier 2, barrier 3 and barrier 4. So now again one challenge is coming, how to decide the width of these ribs. Previously we have decided the width of these ribs depending upon the torque performance, but we are not satisfying in the mechanical robustness. But now here, to have a better mechanical robustness, we provided some additional support in the rotor structure. Now again we have to precise this rib width. So I have shown you two structure. One is 0.5 mm rib width, another is 1 mm rib width. This one is 0.5, this one is 1 mm. What are the impacts we are going to discuss? Yeah, this is the stress performance. You can see here with 0.5 mm radial rib width, we have the stress about 238 megapascal. So this is not going to accept because we are talking about 213 megapascal, but here we are getting what, 238 megapascal. So this is 11% higher than the stress limit of the core material, which has chosen with taking a safety factor of 1.5. And you can see here one rib is lightly stressed. Let me show you. This one is lightly stressed. You can see here it is around 22 megapascal. This radial rib. One rib is lightly stressed. Coming to the next figure for type B, this we have taken as type A. This is type B. 1 mm rib width. What is happening in 1 mm rib width? So in 1 mm rib width, these two ribs are lightly stressed, and the stress limit is coming to 165 megapascal. So this is acceptable. This is acceptable for 1 mm rib width. We have a safe value of 22%, and we have two ribs lightly stressed. So this is acceptable. Now we should not have considered only from the mechanical robustness point of view. We should think about the electromagnetic performance also. Now let me tell you, these ribs will also have some adverse effect on the electromagnetic performance, because when it is exposed with the q-axis flux, the flux lines will pass in this way, like this. Again it will going to increase our LQ. So yeah, let me show you. This is the figure. So this is the flux line. So when we are providing radial ribs, we are providing an additional flux path for the q-axis flux. So if your flux linkage in the q-axis is increasing, that means your LQ is increasing. LQ is increasing means saliency ratio decreases, which is poor torque performance. So again we have a challenge here. So what we should do here? We should not decrease to 0.5 mm, because we have in 0.5 mm we have a very poor mechanical performance. It is coming around 238 megapascal, and if you remove the radial ribs with 0.5 mm tangential rib, it is not acceptable, since again we have a poor performance on the motor. Electromagnetic performance is good, but in the poor performance, the mechanical parameters of the rotor. Then if you have 1 mm, we have a good performance in the mechanical aspects, but not good performance from electromagnetic point of view, because we have increasing the value of LQ. Now what the idea is? So the torque, because of this flux, the torque is decreased about 15% of its original value. The original value is 5.35. Now we are getting, excuse me, let me take some water. The original value is 5.35, and we, with these radial ribs of 1 mm, how much we are getting? We are getting around 4.53. So we have a 15% decrease in torque. Now one can say me, if you would have chosen 0.7 mm tangential rib, we have a good mechanical robust rotor. But what is the value with respect to this? You have to consider this 5.35. So let me calculate it for you. So again we have a decrease around 14 to 15% in torque because of this 4.76. Now we have again for 1 mm we have a decrease in torque about 15%, which is not acceptable. It is better to choose 0.7 mm tangential ribs, because there we have only around 13 to 12% decrease, but after providing the radial ribs of 1 mm we have a decrease in torque about 15%. This is not advisable. Why should we go for 15% decrease? Now, what is the next issue? What is the idea? Now, what we propose, from the stress analysis we confirm that the mechanical stress are higher at this point where it is connected with the carrier. This rib is connected. So it is, instead of have an entire uniform length of the rib, what we can have a variable rib width. So this is what we propose. These are the conventional structure what is existing in literature. So this what we propose. So the opening will be 1 mm, but we have a reduction in the width here which is 0.5 mm. Then again the closing will be 1 mm. So both the openings you can say have 1 mm thickness, but the middle one we have is 0.5 mm thickness. Let us discuss what are the impacts we have after doing this. Yeah. So with this structure we have performed the stress analysis again. Previously with constant 1 mm thickness the stress is 165, very good. We have a robust rotor here. Again with this proposed structure, what we have 189 megapascal the maximum stress, but you can see the tangential ribs are not stressed at all, and these two radial ribs are not stressed at all. So it is below 22 megapascal. However, these two ribs are highly stressed. Of course, this stress limit is very lower than the core limit, that is 213 megapascal after taking safety factor of 1.5. So this is acceptable, but we have unnecessarily proved those two ribs, and we have a very less stress on these two, these four tangential ribs. So what the idea is next? Looking at the stress performance of the motor. Now this is the final geometry, type D. What we have done, we have removed these two. We have removed these two ribs, and because it was I earlier told you these were lightly stressed, the stress performance is only about 22 megapascal, but now you can see it is coming around 175 megapascal, which is well under the limit of core, which is 213 megapascal. So from mechanically point of view we are satisfying the design, and the tangential ribs are equally stressed with the radial ribs. So we have a better stress distribution here, and this is the maximum deformation, which is 49.47 micrometer, which is quite acceptable. Now after this we have already performed the thermal analysis of the proposed design. You can see the temperature is around 61 degree. Mostly the winding is heated because the rotor don't have any winding, so it is very cool part, and the stator as well as also it is very cool part. It is we have taken an ambient temperature of 22 degrees centigrade here. If the ambient temperature increases, there will be some variation in the thermal effect. Now this is the torque characteristic what we have. This is the conventional with 1 mm thickness, okay, and this one is red one is the conventional from 1 mm thickness, and the blue one is what we have proposed. We have decreased the width of this radial rib at the center point to have some increment in the torque. We have actually 8% increment in the torque. Now this is the actual fabricated rotor what we have fabricated. So I can show you the dimension here. Yes, you can see here, these are 0.5 mm thickness. The opening you can see here, I cannot zoom it more. If you can see, this is wider than this. This is 1 mm, this is 0.5 mm. We have discussed why we have only 2 ribs. Of course, you should have 4 ribs if you are talking about a very high speed motor that is around 15,000 20,000 rpm. Since our motor is limited to 6,000 rpm, so we have 2 ribs is enough for us. And these black are the air gaps, this black region, and this is the steel. Of course, you can see here. Now this is the final table, summary results you can say, for our proposed design with the conventional design. So for conventional design, we have 4.53 with 1 mm radial rib thickness. We have already discussed about the tangential ribs, so we have not mentioned here. In all the designs, in both the designs, the tangential rib is fixed to 0.5 mm, and one is with 1 mm thickness, this one, and another is opening 1 mm, middle 1.5, and next opening is also 1 mm. Variable rib width, this is constant rib width. You can see the torque here is 4.53, and here we have 8% increment in the torque, around 7% I think. The saliency ratio here is 4.41, and here it is increased 4.93. Efficiency is also increased. Then mass of the rotor, here it is decreased because we have decreased some amount of iron by reducing the width of the rib. It is negligible, you can say here, around 20 grams. Yeah, 20 or 17 grams. So the stress profile, both are acceptable, 165, 175, both are acceptable, but the advantage we are getting with acceptable stress limit, we have good torque performance, and deformation also both are acceptable. Now we have done some analysis on the permanent magnet assisted motors. So in the permanent magnet assisted synchronous reluctance motor, what we are going to have, we have permanent magnet in the place of barriers. So this is air gap, this is steel, and these are permanent magnets. So we have put some small permanent magnets to just increase the torque density of the motor. Now the torque equation will going to change. This is 3/2. Only this permanent magnet flux component will be added with the previous one, where this lambda PM is the permanent magnet flux linkage. Now selection of these magnets. So under rare earth category, we have SMCO and neodymium iron boron magnet, and under non-earth category we have aluminium, nickel, cobalt, and ceramic or ferrite magnets. So this is the flux density waveform, flux lines vector. What we have, this is for conventional flux density vectors, and this is with permanent magnets. You can see here, after putting permanent magnet, we have two types of structure with permanent magnet assisted. One I have not shown here, of course, to assist D-axis flux, that is to increase LD, and next is to oppose Q-axis flux, that is to increase LQ. Okay, this structure is opposing the Q-axis flux. So here you can see this is Q-axis excitation. So the flux density vector towards the Q-axis, you can see here, these figures are taken when the machine is excited by Q-axis current. So the flux density vector you can see here towards the Q-axis, and here it is opposed by the permanent magnets. You can see here, these flux density vector are opposed by the vectors by the own flux linkage of the permanent magnets. So that's why there is an increment in the torque, because we have a less inductance and we have good saliency ratio, then eventually the torque is increased. So this is the summary analysis. Conventional without permanent magnet we have 5.35 Newton meter. This value is without radial ribs, only we have tangential rib of 0.5 mm. Next, coming to the rare earth category, we have good performance. We have 37% increase in the torque, and here of course neodymium magnet 44%. You can see here it is coming around 7.5 increase in torque. But what is going to happen? These are in US dollars. The material cost means, of course I told you in the very beginning of my presentation, these permanent magnets are higher cost, neodymium magnet and this SMCO magnets. These are very high cost because it is coming under rare earth category. So by using this magnet, the cost of material used, means magnet used, is increased about 46%. And again, with neodymium magnet also it is increased about, not in percentage, actually it is in US dollars. So $46 and $31 it is increased. So if you can afford it, better you go for this. Then the mass of the motor is also going to increase about some around half kg. Then coming to the non-rare earth magnet, this is aluminium, nickel cobalt magnet, and another is ferrite magnet. So this is the average torque is increased with 30%. Again this is 20%, but the cost here is increased about $23, which is a very high value if you calculate in Indian currency, and this is about only $2. So for light vehicle application like e-rickshaw or scooter application, if you are more, especially for scooter application where we have very less space constraint, you have very less space to provide your motor. Even in e-rickshaw you should have some space, but in two-wheeler application there is the very less space is provided for the motor and other components. So you can have this ferrite magnet assisted machine. The around $2, the increment in the material cost. This is not manufacturing cost. This is only I am talking about the magnet cost, not the manufacturing cost. The overall manufacturing cost may increase up to more than this. Only the material cost means magnet cost. So you can have around $2, but you have 20% increase in torque. So if somebody is thinking about the e-rickshaw or scooter application, you should have this permanent magnet assisted motor. Even the length of the magnet, how it has to be chosen, the width of the magnet, the shape of the magnet, these are again very complex things I am not covering in this session. Of course you can go for the literature if you want it. So as I told you, this is a better choice for light electric vehicle application. So these are, I explained this paper. These are our publications. I explained this paper and also I explained this paper, that is permanent magnet assisted, but because of time constraint I was not able to explain these two. If you have some interest, here we have given the detailed fabrication process of our motor, and here the overall design of the motor, means stator, winding and all. So these are some of my references, and thank you for your kind attention. And let me tell you, I am not a very much expert in this field, but I tried my level best to make you something understandable what the machine is. Hope I meet the requirements of the viewers. Thank you. Over to Jagdish sir. Yeah. So I would like to have some questions if the viewers have some questions. Uh, Hello. Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. Tell me your question. Yes, yes, sir, I can hear you. Tell me your question. Hello. Yeah, I have software ANSYS Maxwell, that is for electromagnetic analysis. Then we have used Workbench for thermal analysis and yeah, yes sir, tell me. Actually, somebody muted me. Hello, sir, you muted me. Hello, hello, am I audible? Hello, am I audible? Ah, ah, okay. So maybe some problem with this connection. So uh, yeah, coming to your question, we have used ANSYS Maxwell for electromagnetic analysis and ANSYS Workbench we have used for thermal and stress analysis. Hello, hello, hello. ANSYS Maxwell. ANSYS Maxwell for electromagnetic analysis and ANSYS Workbench for thermal and stress analysis. Uh, Hello, hello. Any other questions or yes sir, yes sir. Uh, we have actually previously in 19, sir, can you switch off your fan please? Can you switch off your fan? Hello, hello, am I audible? Hello. Ah, your question. Coming to your question, actually this machine is evolved in 1923s. So around that point, they are using it for spinning industry. After that, because of this hike in permanent magnet cost, then people thought of where to use non-permanent magnet motors. So we in traction application it is not employed yet. It is in research condition and it is employed in pumping application for ABB, pumping and industrial application. ABB is producing this machine. Any other questions? Yes sir. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, it is feasible to use, but you will not get the performance like permanent magnet motor. Of course, I do agree with you. Permanent magnet motors are highly dominant for high torque density motors. We cannot get the torque density as permanent magnet motors can give us, but we can have acceptable torque density. Yeah. Hello. Thank you, sir. If we don't have any other question, we can conclude the session, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please tell me. Hello. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible. Uh, yes. Actually, I would like to conclude this session. Uh, so, concluding, coming to the conclusion of this session, actually mechanically robust or mechanical robustness and electrical performance of this motor are the two sides of a coin. You can say, if you have good electrical performance with bad mechanical robustness, and you have good mechanical robustness with bad electrical performance. So, in my opinion, if any research scholar is there in this presentation, so people can think of some solution how to do it, and we are thinking of some solution. We are working on it also, and of course, you people can also think about the solution how to, if you are interested in machine design, of course. So again, I am thanking to my supervisor, Dr. Ritesh Kumar Kesri, for providing this opportunity on behalf of VNIT to give this lecture on this machine design of synchronous reluctance motor. And I would like to also thanks Nagpur Institute of Technology, Nagpur Institute of Technology for inviting me this. And Dr. Jagdish, of course, is very kind to me. And Dr. Jagdish, thank you for inviting me. And most important, yeah, our participant, we have a patiently hear this presentation, whether they are involved in this or not, machine design, but they heard it. So thank you all of you. So I'll take a goodbye from you. Yeah, I will take goodbye from you. Hope you are doing well in this period of lockdown. Have a good day. Thank you, sir. Thank you.